Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the world around you grow soft and quiet. Tonight, we journey to a time long ago, to a world where gods and mortals walked the same earth, where the seasons themselves were shaped by love, loss, and the quiet magic of the land. In the heart of ancient Greece, there was a maiden named Persephone, whose beauty and grace were whispered about in the softest winds, whose laughter could make flowers bloom. But beneath the gentle meadows and golden fields, a world of mystery and shadows waited, an underworld where life and death danced together, where the cycles of the earth were mirrored in every heartbeat. As you settle into your bed, let your body grow heavy and your mind grow calm. With each word, feel yourself drifting closer to Persephone's world, where flowers glow softly, rivers murmur like lullabies, and the night stretches endlessly, warm and inviting. Tonight, we follow her story, not just of loss, but of transformation, of a journey that moves between light and shadow, and of the quiet magic that exists in every ending and every beginning. Breathe in and let your thoughts soften. Breathe out and let the story carry you. Before I forget, please, I will really appreciate you like this video if it really gives you what you want. Also support my journey. Click the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. The first light of dawn stretched gently across the meadow, softening the edges of the world. A thin veil of morning mist clung to the grass, sparkling faintly like scattered diamonds as the sun peeked over distant hills. Each blade seemed alive, trembling in a tender breeze, carrying the faint scent of earth and dew. Among the flowers, a young maiden walked slowly, barefoot, feeling the cool softness of the grass beneath her feet. She was Persephone, radiant and serene, moving with a grace that seemed to belong to the dawn itself. Every step stirred the petals of crocuses, irises, and roses, leaving trails of color that shimmered like fleeting rainbows. The air was alive with birdsong. Small flits of wings carried delicate harmonies, weaving around Persephone, as though nature itself had composed this melody just for her. She reached down to touch a particularly vivid violet, its petals soft against her fingertips, and paused, inhaling its gentle perfume. In this moment, the world felt boundless. Persephone's eyes traced the hills, the forests, the sparkling streams that wound through the valley below. Every detail seemed sharper, yet softer at the same time, as if the universe had tuned itself to her senses alone. The morning mist shifted with the breeze, and for a moment it almost seemed to form the shape of wings lifting her gently from the ground. And yet, even as the sun climbed higher, a faint golden shimmer flickered at the edge of the meadow, just beyond the tall grass. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but enough to catch Persephone's attention. She tilted her head, curiosity dancing in her eyes. There was no fear here, only a quiet fascination, an instinct that told her something extraordinary was waiting, just out of reach. The flowers around her bent slightly toward that shimmer, as if bowing to some hidden presence. She stepped closer, letting her fingers brush against a handful of tiny blossoms, feeling their soft warmth, their gentle pulse. The breeze carried whispers, soft as silk, rustling through the leaves, but the words were unclear, drifting just beyond comprehension. Persephone knelt by a cluster of roses, tracing the intricate folds of the petals, marveling at the tiny patterns etched like secret runes. Somewhere behind her, the soft babble of a stream invited her closer, promising cool relief and quiet reflection. She could hear it calling, a gentle encouragement to explore, to step beyond the familiar paths she had walked so many times before. And as she rose, the shimmer of light at the meadow's edge pulsed once more, almost beckoning. Persephone took a deep breath, feeling the morning air fill her lungs, carrying with it the scent of soil, blossoms, and something else, something ancient, whispering of unseen places and untold stories. She smiled, a soft, knowing curve of her lips, and moved slowly toward it, feeling each step connect her to the rhythm of the earth. The meadow stretched infinitely, bathed in gentle sunlight, alive with colors and sounds. Yet beneath the beauty, the hint of something mysterious lingered. The day was just beginning, and Persephone, the maiden of the meadow, had no inkling that this morning would change everything. The shimmer awaited, quiet and patient, holding secrets that would soon unfold in ways both wondrous and unsettling. For now the world was calm. The breeze whispered, the flowers swayed, and Persephone walked forward, unaware that the first step toward destiny had already been taken. Persephone's bare feet brushed the soft grass as she continued across the meadow, her senses alive to every sound and color around her. But she was not alone. Around her, the daughters of the Oceanides, the water nymphs, danced lightly, their laughter like the tinkling of tiny bells carried on the morning breeze. Leucippe twirled among the bluebells, her golden hair catching the sunlight. Pheno and Electra chased one another along the stream's edge, splashing water with delicate fingers, sending droplets sparkling like tiny diamonds. Ianthe and Millet picked wildflowers, weaving them into crowns to place on their heads, while the others, Rhoda, Calliphro, and Melibosus, sang softly, their voices merging with the chorus of birds in the trees.
Persephone smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest at the sight. She knelt to pick a cluster of white crocuses, arranging them carefully in her hair. The meadow seemed to hold its breath, as if nature itself recognized the innocence and grace of these maidens. A sudden ripple of light shimmered across the horizon, drawing Persephone's gaze toward a flower unlike any other in the meadow. Its petals glowed with a soft, golden hue, standing taller and more proud than the rest. Even the nymphs paused, sensing something extraordinary in its presence. Persephone took a step closer, drawn by curiosity. The flower's fragrance was unlike anything she had known, sweet, intoxicating, almost alive. She reached for it, her fingers brushing the petals gently, but just as she did, a soft voice carried on the wind. "Do you feel it too?" asked Electra, her tone barely above a whisper. "Yes," Persephone replied, her voice calm, almost reverent. It's different, almost like it's calling to me." The nymphs exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of wonder and unease. Lucipe tilted her head, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Flowers don't call to anyone," she said, though her voice betrayed the tiniest tremor of uncertainty. The breeze shifted, carrying the faintest tremor of a sound, like the distant rumble of the earth itself. Persephone felt a shiver run down her spine, not from fear, but from a deep sense that something beyond the meadow was stirring. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The sunlight caught the edges of the petals, illuminating them with an almost supernatural glow. Persephone took a deep breath, savoring the scent, the colors, and the soft rustle of the leaves. In that moment, the world felt perfectly still, yet charged with quiet anticipation. Then the playful laughter of the nymphs returned, breaking the silence. Persephone turned back, smiling, but the memory of that golden flower lingered in her mind. She felt a strange mix of excitement and hesitation, a pull she could not yet name. And here, dear listener, the meadow itself seems to pause, holding its secrets just beyond reach. If you're paying attention, type "I'm still here" in the comments. Let's see who is walking this path with Persephone, step by step. As the morning unfolded, the maidens continued their gentle play, unaware that the world beyond the meadow was shifting. The golden flower remained, subtle yet undeniable, waiting for the moment when its presence would change everything. Persephone felt the warmth of the sun on her shoulders, the laughter of her companions like a comforting melody, and the pull of something unknown just beyond her sight. She didn't know it yet, but her life was on the brink of transformation, a journey that would carry her far beyond this meadow, into realms of beauty, power, and mystery. The golden flower shimmered under Persephone's fingers, its petals delicate yet impossibly vibrant, almost humming with a quiet energy. She knelt beside it, fascinated, unaware that every step closer was weaving her fate ever tighter with something far beyond the meadow. "Persephone," Lucipe called softly, breaking the spell. "Are you sure you should be touching that one?" Persephone lifted her gaze, meeting her friend's worried eyes. "I can't explain it," she admitted. "It's like it's waiting for me." Pheno stepped closer, her curiosity overcoming caution. "Waiting for you, or for someone else?" Her question hung in the air, unanswered. The breeze shifted suddenly, stronger this time, carrying with it a faint vibration that rumbled beneath Persephone's feet. The ground seemed alive, the flowers swaying in perfect rhythm. A sense of wonder, yes, but also unease prickled along the edges of her mind. Then, without warning, the earth beneath the golden flower cracked, a narrow fissure running through the grass. Persephone instinctively stepped back, but the pull of the flower was irresistible. She reached toward it once more, her fingertips brushing the petals, and in that instant, the ground split wide open. From the chasm rose a figure, majestic and terrifying. Hades, driving a chariot drawn by dark, otherworldly horses. Their hooves struck the earth with thunderous rhythm, and black smoke spiraled into the sky. Persephone froze, her heart pounding, unsure whether to run or to stare in awe. The nymphs scattered in a panic, their cries echoing through the meadow. Only Electra lingered, eyes wide with fear. "Run, Persephone!" she shouted, but Persephone's feet felt rooted, her gaze locked on the god before her. Hades extended a hand, his dark eyes fixed on hers. There was no malice. Yet the weight of inevitability pressed upon her, an invisible chain stronger than any she had ever known. A soft whisper of wind carried through the meadow, almost as if the earth itself was speaking. "Your path has begun." And just like that, Persephone's world changed. She was lifted into the chariot, rising above the meadow, the nymphs' frantic cries fading into the distance. The sunlight dimmed as shadows gathered beneath the horse's powerful hooves. But even in her fear, Persephone noticed the beauty of the scene, the golden flowers below, the endless sky above, and the thrill of stepping into the unknown.
And here, dear listener, we pause. Imagine the chariot racing across the unseen boundary between worlds. What would you feel if you were Persephone, caught between fear and wonder? Drop a comment with your thoughts. "I'd follow," or "I'd run." Let's see who would brave the unknown. The meadow below disappeared behind a curtain of mist, and Persephone realized something she could not yet name. This was not just abduction. This was a turning point. Every heartbeat, every breath carried her closer to a world of shadow and light, where she would learn the true measure of power, courage, and destiny. The golden flower remained in the meadow, swaying gently as if mocking her departure, a silent witness to the beginning of a story that would echo through time. The chariot raced, its wheels slicing through mist and shadow, and Persephone clung tightly to Hades, the wind whipping her hair around her face. The world she knew, the sunlit meadow, the laughter of her friends, was gone, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed against her chest. Below, the landscape transformed. Meadows gave way to jagged cliffs and rivers that glimmered like black glass. Faint whispers echoed from the depths, carrying both warning and invitation. Persephone shivered, not from cold, but from the weight of stepping into a realm she could not yet name. "This is Hades?" she asked, voice trembling. "Yes," the god replied, calm and unyielding. "This is my realm, the place where life meets death." Persephone's heart raced. She had heard stories, frightening tales of Tartarus and the souls of the dead, but nothing could have prepared her for this vast, shadowed world. The chariot dipped toward a river that shimmered in darkness. Its waters were still, yet alive, whispering secrets no mortal had heard. "That river," she murmured, leaning closer. "What is it?" "Styx," Hades said. "It marks the boundary between the living and the dead. Only those who are meant to cross may enter." A chill ran down Persephone's spine as she noticed shapes moving beneath the surface. Shadows of those long gone floated silently, their faces blurred, their eyes distant and hollow. Some clutched coins, tiny silver tokens that shimmered in the dim light, proof of ancient rites, the offerings that allowed passage across this river of inevitability. The chariot veered along the riverbank, and Persephone glimpsed Tartarus far below, a pit so vast that its depths seemed endless. She swallowed hard. Legends spoke of those trapped there, eternal punishment awaiting those who defied the gods. She forced herself not to look too closely, but her eyes kept drifting downward. Yet, in the distance, she noticed something else. The fields of Elysium, bathed in gentle light, rolling with meadows that seemed untouched by shadow. There were no cries here, only peace, beauty, and the scent of perpetual spring. Persephone realized that even in the underworld, balance existed. Punishment and paradise, shadow and light, despair and hope. Hades spoke again, his voice steady, almost gentle. You will learn to navigate this world, Persephone. It is not only my domain, but a realm where all existence continues in forms unseen above. You must understand it to truly find your place. Persephone nodded, gripping the edge of the chariot. Every word felt heavy with destiny. Yet she could not shake a flicker of curiosity. Even fear carried a strange thrill, the pulse of adventure that made her heart beat faster. The chariot glided over the river, the water hissing beneath the hooves of the horses, and Persephone's gaze wandered to the flickering lights far in the distance. Shapes of souls danced along the banks, some lost, some guiding others forward. The underworld was not silent, it was alive, a city of whispers and shadows, where every step carried consequence. Suddenly, a chilling wind swept through the chariot, carrying voices she could almost understand. They spoke of pomegranates, of choices made, of a bond between Hades and herself that could never be broken. Persephone's fingers brushed the edge of her cloak, and she realized what she did next would shape not only her fate, but the rhythm of seasons above. Life and death intertwined in a cycle older than the gods themselves. And as the chariot carried her further into the unknown, a thought struck her. Maybe this descent was not punishment, but transformation. Maybe she was meant to become more than a maiden lost in the shadows. Maybe she was meant to rule. But that, Persephone knew, would take time, patience, and courage she had yet to find. Persephone's feet touched solid ground for the first time in the underworld, yet the soil felt strange, dense, humming with life unseen. Shadows shifted around her, and faint whispers brushed against her ears like wind through reeds. She realized she was no longer just a visitor. Every step carried weight. Every breath seemed connected to the pulse of this hidden world. Hades led her through winding corridors of rock and mist, where faint lights glimmered like trapped stars. Along the path, spirits paused to observe her, their expressions unreadable. Some reached out with translucent hands, as if seeking recognition. She felt both fear and fascination. Each encounter was a lesson, a test of her courage and presence. "This is your first trial," Hades said, voice low and steady. "The underworld tests those who enter. Some falter, some rise. You will learn your limits and discover what lies within you." Persephone swallowed hard. Her first trial came quickly, a bridge suspended over a river of shadows. Below, the water churned with faces of the lost, and faint cries reached her ears.
Echoing her own fear, the bridge seemed impossibly narrow, swaying as if alive. One misstep would plunge her into uncertainty, yet Hades did not move to guide her. She hesitated. The shadows whispered, tempting her to step back, to retreat to safety. But then, a soft glow emerged from the center of the bridge, an offering of courage, small but real. Persephone stepped forward, each footfall resonating like a heartbeat in the vast emptiness. Halfway across, the whispers grew louder, voices filled with doubt. "You are not meant to be here. Turn back. This is not your place." She paused, and in that moment, she realized something profound. The underworld mirrored her own doubts. The trial was not just physical, it was internal. Her courage, her choices, her willingness to face the unknown, these were what would shape her destiny. A sudden wind carried a familiar scent, pomegranate, sweet and red, an echo of the fruit that had bound her to this world. Persephone clenched her fists, steadying herself. If she faltered now, the connection to life above and her role below could shift in ways she could not control. Finally, she reached the other side. Her legs trembled, but her spirit was stronger. Hades nodded once, approving, as if her determination had been quietly observed and measured. Ahead, the underworld opened into a vast hall lined with statues of deities and heroes, some familiar, some lost to time. Their gazes seemed to pierce her, reminding her that even in darkness, the world watched and judged. Persephone realized the underworld was not merely a place of shadows. It was a realm of reflection, where past and future intertwined, and choices echoed endlessly. Hades spoke again, breaking the silence. "Your trials have only begun. Soon you will confront spirits who challenge more than your courage. They will test your wisdom, your empathy, and your ability to lead." Persephone's heart raced. She could feel the underworld's rhythm, the pulse of life and death intertwined. A flicker of determination ignited within her. She was no longer just a victim of circumstance. She was learning the rules of this strange, shadowed realm, discovering the power she had yet to claim. As the hall's doors loomed ahead, Persephone paused, glancing back at the bridge she had crossed. The whispers had quieted, but their lesson lingered. Courage is forged in moments of uncertainty, and strength is measured by the choices we make when fear presses hardest. And just as she stepped forward, a faint rustle came from the shadows beyond the hall. Something watching, waiting. Something that would change her understanding of the underworld forever. Persephone's steps echoed through the vast hall, each footfall stirring a faint swirl of dust and whispers. The statues lining the chamber seemed to lean slightly, as if shifting their weight to follow her passage. Yet the real presence was not stone. It was the shadows. From the far end of the hall, a low murmur rose, a chorus of voices speaking in languages she didn't know, yet somehow understood. "Why do you come? What do you seek?" The shadows began to coalesce, forming shapes at once human and not. Faces appeared, eyes glinting with knowledge of lifetimes, of choices made and paths abandoned. Persephone's heart pounded. She realized this was her first true confrontation with the underworld itself, not with Hades, not with the tangible dangers of the realm, but with its essence, its memory, and its judgment. Hades watched silently from the doorway, his expression unreadable. "They will ask questions. Some have answers you must give. Others will test what you feel inside. Listen carefully. Speak honestly. And beware, they can read the truths you try to hide. The first shadow stepped forward, a figure draped in gray, eyes like molten silver. It whispered, "Child of life and death, do you understand what it means to belong to this place?" Persephone faltered. The words struck deeper than any physical threat ever could. She had lived in sunlight, in warmth and growth, and yet now she stood in a realm where time itself felt different, where mortality and eternity intertwined. She took a steadying breath. I will learn. I will understand," she said, her voice firm, despite the tremor in her chest. Another figure emerged, taller, its presence more commanding. "You have tasted the pomegranate's gift. You are bound. But bonds are tested, not merely given. Tell us, what will you do when the living above forget you? When your mother grieves and the seasons falter?" Persephone's thoughts raced. She had not considered the weight of her absence beyond her own fears. The grief of Demeter, the imbalance of the world above, pressed against her conscience like a physical force. She said, "I will find balance. I will honor both worlds. I will not let one suffer for the other." The shadows whispered among themselves, murmuring approval or doubt. It was hard to tell. Then the air shifted, colder now, as a new presence entered. It was smaller, quicker, almost flickering at the edges of her vision. It hissed, and what of desire? Of choices you did not make? Of the will you gave away? Will you claim it now, or let it slip like sand through your fingers? Persephone's stomach knotted. This trial was not of strength, but of self, of identity, courage, and determination. She remembered the bridge, the shadows that whispered doubt, the taste of pomegranate that bound her. Every lesson in this underworld seemed a mirror of her own inner world. She said, "I will claim it. Every choice, every path. I am mine, even here."
The shadows receded slightly, a low hum vibrating through the hall. "Then proceed, Persephone," the first figure said. "But remember, every step deeper carries a cost, and every choice shapes not only your fate, but the balance of both worlds." A hush fell. Persephone felt the weight of the hall settle around her, as if the underworld itself had paused to acknowledge her resolve. She turned to Hades, expecting instruction, but he simply gestured toward the next corridor, dark and twisting. As she stepped forward, a whisper trailed behind her. "What you do next will echo beyond the veil. Choose wisely." The corridor twisted like a living serpent, walls narrowing and stretching in impossible angles. Persephone's heartbeat echoed in rhythm with the distant dripping of water, each step amplifying the tension in the silent underworld. She could feel the weight of the shadows behind her, their murmurs fading, leaving a stillness that felt both ominous and expectant. Ahead, the passage opened into a cavernous hall. At its center stood a figure of colossal proportions, unlike anything Persephone had seen. Its armor shimmered with dark energy, black as night, but glowing faintly with a crimson pulse like the beat of some unseen heart. two immense eyes, golden and unblinking, fixed on her instantly. "You who enter the underworld," it intoned, its voice a grinding rumble that shook the floor. "You seek passage, yet none may pass without proving their worth. Speak your name and declare your purpose." Persephone swallowed her fear. She knew every word carried weight, and every hesitation could be used against her. "I am Persephone," she said, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. "Daughter of Demeter and Zeus, I come to understand, to honor, and to claim my place in this realm. I will not falter." The guardian's eyes flared, and the cavern responded with a deep, resonant vibration. "Many have claimed words like yours, yet words alone are hollow. Your spirit will be tested." Before her, the floor shifted, rising into jagged peaks and valleys of black stone. The walls of the hall seemed to ripple, forming twisting paths that moved as if alive. "Step forward," the guardian commanded. "Face the challenge of the threshold. Each choice defines your strength, and every fear may become your prison." Persephone hesitated only for a moment before taking a careful step. Immediately, the floor beneath her rippled like liquid shadow. Whispering voices reached her ears, echoing memories of sunlight and laughter, of her mother's sorrow and the world she had left behind. Fear surged, clawing at her resolve. A spectral wolf appeared from the darkness, teeth bared, eyes glowing like molten gold. It circled her, snarling, testing her courage. Every instinct urged her to run, but Persephone remembered the words of the shadows. "Claim your will. Stand for yourself." She closed her eyes and centered herself. "I am here. I belong," she whispered, and when she opened them, the wolf froze. Its snarls faded into a low growl, then dissolved entirely. The guardian's eyes narrowed. "You show strength, yet strength alone will not suffice." The hall shifted again, and this time a mirror formed before her, reflecting not her image, but 1,000 versions of herself, each one a possibility she might have been, a path she might have chosen. Doubt whispered from every reflection, "You are not ready. You do not belong. This is not your world." She lifted her chin and spoke clearly, her voice unwavering. "I am all of them, and I am none. I am Persephone, and I will shape my destiny, even here." The guardian stepped aside, bowing its massive head. "Then proceed. The next challenge awaits in the Hall of Echoes. But remember, what you see, hear, and feel will test not just your courage, but the very essence of who you are. Every step is both trial and lesson. Fail, and you will be lost to doubt. Persephone stepped into the Hall of Echoes, and the air changed immediately. It was colder here, thick with the weight of 1,000 whispered memories. The walls seemed to hum with voices, not random chatter, but fragments of conversations, thoughts, and regrets from both the living and the dead. Every step she took multiplied the echoes, making the whole a maze of sound and shadow. The path ahead was lined with towering columns, each etched with intricate runes that pulsed faintly in the dim light. As she walked, the echoes coalesced into familiar voices, her mother's lamenting cry, her own frightened sobs, and the distant laughter of the companions she had once left behind in the sunlight. Every sound tugged at her, threatening to unravel her resolve. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was her own reflection, but twisted and hollow, eyes black voids and lips curled in a mocking smile. "You think you are ready? You think you belong here? You are nothing without the light you left behind." She froze, feeling the cold gnawing at her bones. The echo moved closer, mimicking every step, every movement, perfectly synchronized. The whispers became louder, filling the hall with a cacophony of doubt. "You are weak. You will fail. This is not your place." She remembered the Guardian's warning. Every step here was a test of essence. Drawing in a shuddering breath, Persephone forced her gaze onto the mirror image before her. "I am not my fears," she said softly, but with certainty. "I am Persephone. I am more than doubt, more than shadow. I am myself." The echo lunged, but the sound of her words sliced through it, causing the reflection to ripple and distort. The hall responded, the runes on the columns glowing brighter as the echoes began to fracture, separating into distinct voices, no longer threatening but curious. Persephone pressed forward, each step revealing a new illusion. She saw herself failing to save others, wandering lost, powerless. She heard voices accusing, questioning, reminding her of every weakness she had ever felt. Yet, with each challenge, her confidence strengthened. Every acknowledgement of fear became a thread weaving her resolve tighter, shaping her identity in the crucible of the underworld. At the hall's center, she came upon a vast pool of still water, black as obsidian, reflecting a sky of unseen stars. The whispers quieted, and only one voice remained, her own. Leaning over the water, she saw her face, not twisted, not fearful, but serene and commanding. For the first time, she understood the balance of her dual existence. The light she had left behind and the darkness she now inhabited were not enemies, but parts of her whole self. The reflection spoke not with words, but a deep resonance. "You have learned to walk between worlds. You are ready." From the shadows, the Guardian's massive form appeared once more, bowing its head. "The whole has judged you," it rumbled. "You have faced your fears and recognized your essence. Few possess the strength to do so. Proceed now, for the path leads deeper still, and your journey is far from over." Persephone rose from the edge of the pool, feeling an unshakable clarity. She had faced the echoes of doubt, the illusions of weakness, and emerged stronger, not because the hall had granted her power, but because she had claimed it herself.
Beyond the Hall of Echoes, the corridor descended further, winding toward the shadowed heart of the underworld. A faint red glow pulsed in the distance, promising trials yet unseen. But now, Persephone was no longer just a frightened maiden. She was becoming the queen she was destined to be. The corridor narrowed, the walls slick with shadows that seemed to breathe. Persephone's footsteps echoed like drum beats in the silence, a rhythm that felt both grounding and ominous. Ahead, the red glow grew, pulsating like the heartbeat of the underworld itself. This was no ordinary chamber. She could feel the weight of the realms pressing against her, a threshold that separated the known from the unimaginable. Before her, the crimson glow coalesced into a vast doorway, carved from black obsidian and streaked with veins of molten red. Runes shimmered along its surface, shifting like living fire. Inscribed upon them were warnings, promises, and truths, each word a fragment of the underworld's memory. Enter and claim your destiny, or turn back and remain unmade. Persephone's hand brushed the door, and a surge of power shot through her. She felt every sorrow, every fear, every betrayal she had ever known. The voices of the dead whispered around her, a chorus of both warning and welcome. And then a sudden stillness, a heartbeat of absolute silence. The door parted without sound, revealing a chamber bathed in deep crimson. Shadows moved along the walls, forming figures that resembled both humans and gods, lost souls and forgotten spirits. At the center of the room stood a throne carved from black stone, veins of fire glowing across its surface. Sitting upon it was Hades, tall, imposing, eyes like molten coal. His presence radiated authority and inevitability. "You've come," he said, his voice both gentle and commanding, echoing in the chamber as if the walls themselves spoke. "I walk because I must," she replied, her voice steady, resonating with the certainty she had forged in the Hall of Echoes. "I do not fear this place, nor what it demands of me." Hades rose, the throne groaning beneath him. The shadows stirred, forming a swirling vortex of darkness and ember. "The underworld is not mine alone to govern," he said. "It is a balance of life, death, and renewal. To rule beside me, you must understand its truths, accept its laws, and face its trials. Only then will you claim your place." From the walls, spectral hands reached, whispering temptations and threats, the chance to flee, the lure of power without understanding, the promise of freedom if she abandoned the path. Persephone felt their pull, but she remembered the echo of her reflection, the mastery she had claimed over doubt. Her fingers tightened around her cloak, grounding herself in her own strength. She stepped forward, and the shadows parted like a tide. Hades extended a hand, not in threat, but in acknowledgement. "Come, Persephone, see what lies at the heart of the underworld. Understand it, and you may yet command it." As she moved toward him, the chamber seemed to shift, revealing glimpses of rivers and fields, of Tartarus and the Elysian plains, all interwoven in a tapestry of life and death. Every vision was a lesson, every shadow a story, every flame a truth. Persephone understood now that to rule was not to dominate, but to harmonize, to bind together the living and the dead, light and shadow, fear and courage. With a deep breath, she crossed the threshold fully, stepping into the heart of the underworld. The crimson glow wrapped around her, not as a warning, but as a mantle. She was no longer just a frightened maiden. Persephone, the maiden of the fields, she was becoming queen, an embodiment of the balance between two worlds, the living and the dead, the sun above and the shadows below. The chamber fell silent. Hades' eyes softened, a hint of respect mingling with the eternal authority in his gaze. "You have taken the first step," he said. "The trials are far from over, but this is the beginning of what you were meant to be." Persephone's heart swelled with purpose. The underworld was vast, terrifying, and incomprehensible, but she had claimed her courage. The throne, the shadows, the crimson light, they were no longer threats. They were mirrors of the strength she had forged, the power she was ready to wield. Persephone had stepped fully into the heart of the underworld, but the crimson light faded into the dim luminescence of the shadow court. A vast hall where the weight of eternity pressed down on every soul present. Statues of forgotten kings and queens lined the walls, their eyes hollow, their features frozen in eternal judgment. The air was thick with the scent of incense, earth, and the faint tang of iron. Hades led her to the center of the hall. "The underworld does not bend to fear," he said, his voice resonating across the vaulted space. "To rule here, you must face what no mortal dares, the reflection of your deepest truths and darkest doubts." Before her, 3 massive doors appeared, each carved from obsidian and etched with glyphs that glimmered like molten silver. "Beyond each door lies a trial," Hades explained. "Only by passing them can you claim authority beside me. The first tests courage, the second wisdom, the third, the essence of your heart." The doors shifted slightly, as if breathing, inviting her choice. Persephone felt a shiver run down her spine. Her instinct was to falter, but the echo of the Hall of Echoes steadied her. She approached the first door, courage coiling like fire in her chest. The door opened into a cavern filled with writhing shadows, the ground littered with illusions of her past fears, visions of loss, failure, and helplessness. Whispers clawed at her mind, coaxing her to turn back. Each shadow took a familiar form, the face of her mother pleading, friends she might never see, a future she could never reclaim. Persephone stood firm, drawing on the strength she had forged in the fields above and the halls below. She spoke aloud, voice echoing in the cavern. "I do not deny fear, but I do not surrender to it." With each word, the shadows recoiled, dissolving into mist that vanished into the cavern walls. Beyond the shadows lay the second door, glowing faintly with silver light. Wisdom awaited her here, not in scrolls or words, but in choices. Inside, she encountered scenes from countless lives intertwined, mortals and gods, heroes and criminals, each moment a thread in the tapestry of existence. A voice whispered, "Which path matters most? Which choice defines destiny?" Persephone stepped carefully through visions of disaster and triumph. She learned that power without understanding was a hollow thing, that justice required patience, and that empathy could temper even the strictest laws. By navigating the labyrinth of choices, she demonstrated not only her intellect, but her capacity for measured judgment. The final door loomed dark as midnight, silent except for a faint heartbeat that seemed to echo her own. This trial demanded the essence of her heart, her desires, her fears, and her capacity to love even in the face of loss. Inside, the shadows of Hades' realm themselves seemed to rise, testing her attachment, loyalty, and selfhood. A vision of her life above flickered, the fields, her mother's face, the mortal world she had left behind. Each longing pulled at her, each memory a chain threatening to bind her. Persephone's heart ached, but she did not break. She embraced both worlds, acknowledging her connection to the living while accepting her new role in the underworld. The final door melted into darkness, leaving her standing in the open, the weight of all trials pressing upon her, yet balanced by newfound strength. Hades approached, his gaze softened but unwavering. You have faced fear, discerned wisdom, and embraced your heart. Few could endure this, yet you have, and in so doing, you claim the mantle not as a captive, but as a queen. Persephone felt the power surge within her, not as a weapon, but as a harmony of life, death, and renewal. The shadow court bowed in recognition, the statue's hollow eyes flickering with acknowledgement. She was no longer merely Persephone, maiden of the fields. She was a sovereign of the in-between, the balance that governed the living and the dead alike. The trials were over, but the underworld itself awaited her command. Rivers, shadows, spirits, and secrets, they would all test her further, shaping the ruler she was destined to become. And in that moment, Persephone understood that her journey had only just begun. Here's chapter 11, continuing Persephone's journey, focusing on her first challenges as queen of the underworld. The underworld had grown quieter, the initial tremors of Persephone's arrival settling into a rhythm of shadows and whispers. Yet peace was fleeting. As queen, she discovered that ruling was not a matter of commanding obedience. It required understanding the intricate balance between life above and death below. The first test came not from Hades, but from the spirits themselves. Lost souls, unsettled by lingering regrets or unfinished lives, wandered the shadowed plains. Some clung desperately to memories, their cries echoing through the hollow corridors of Hades' halls. Others challenged her authority, resentful of their fate, testing her patience and resolve. Persephone moved among them with quiet dignity. She listened, offered guidance, and reminded them of the natural order. "Your time above has ended," she said softly to one spirit, clinging to a sunlit grove.
But your story continues here. Embrace it, and you will find peace. Slowly, the shadows bowed, acknowledging her presence not with fear, but with trust. Hades observed, silent as always. "You wield mercy as deftly as authority," he remarked. "Few could navigate the needs of the dead without faltering." Persephone inclined her head,
understanding that her compassion was not weakness, but a bridge between realms. Yet the challenges of leadership extended beyond the dead. Whispers of imbalance in the mortal world reached the underworld. Crops failing, rivers running dry, storms disrupting harvests. Persephone recognized the connection. The seasons themselves were tied to her presence. Each decision, each emotional shift rippled into the living world above. One evening, she walked along the river Styx, its dark waters flowing with the weight of promises and memories. As she touched the surface, visions of spring and winter intertwined, blossoms struggling to bloom, leaves decaying before their time. The seasons demanded harmony, and she felt the gravity of her dual role more than ever. Hades approached silently. Your presence above ensures life endures below, and vice versa. Do not underestimate the responsibility. Persephone nodded, feeling the pulse of the world in her veins. She realized that her annual journeys to the living world were not mere tradition, they were vital acts of balance. That night, a new challenge arrived, a messenger spirit, glowing faintly, bearing news of unrest among the underworld's lesser deities. Guardians of rivers, keepers of shadows, and emissaries of lost souls had grown restless, questioning her authority and testing boundaries. Persephone knew confrontation was inevitable. She prepared herself, understanding that the true test of a queen was not surviving trials alone, but inspiring loyalty, respect, and order among those she ruled. As dawn, or its shadowed equivalent, stretched across the underworld, Persephone felt a surge of determination. She would walk the line between mercy and power, life and death, guiding souls, commanding respect, and ensuring the eternal cycles of the world above and below remained unbroken. In that moment, she was no longer merely a captive of fate. She was the pulse of seasons, the guardian of transitions, the queen who ruled with both wisdom and compassion. And yet, deep in the caverns of the underworld, she sensed the whisper of challenges still to come, forces beyond even Hades' command, awaiting the moment they could test her rule. The underworld trembled that night, though no mortal eye could see it. Whispers had grown into murmurs, murmurs into defiance. Persephone felt it as a chill along the halls. Restless minor deities, guardians of rivers and keepers of lost souls, questioning her authority. Her reign was still young, and power required proof, not just presence. A council was called in the grand hall of shadows. The air was thick with expectation. Dark shapes gathered, spirits and minor deities alike, their forms shifting between solidity and mist. Hades remained silent at his throne, observing her. Persephone stepped forward, heart steady, voice calm yet firm. You question the balance of this realm, but you forget why the underworld exists. Here all things come to rest, yet all things are remembered. You serve the living and the dead alike, and your obedience maintains the cycles of existence. Murmurs stirred among the crowd. One of the river guardians floated forward, water dripping from his form. You are young, he said, voice like rushing currents. How can we trust that you understand the weight of eternity? Persephone met his gaze, unwavering. I have seen life above and death below. I have felt the pull of seasons in my veins. I may be young, but my purpose is older than any of us. Order must be maintained, not through fear, but through understanding. A tense silence followed.
Then a sudden ripple of movement, shadows flaring, voices rising. The rebellion had begun, subtle at first, a test of wills. Persephone did not falter. She moved among them, offering guidance, recalling their duties, reminding them of the sacred balance they all upheld. Slowly, her words sunk in. The unrest did not vanish, but it cooled, like a storm breaking on distant hills. Hades finally spoke, his voice deep and resonant. "You have faced them well," he said. "Leadership is not given, it is claimed. You have claimed it." Persephone felt the weight of his approval, but she knew this was only the beginning. As the hall emptied, a messenger spirit appeared again, eyes bright with urgent news. Mortals in the lands above were suffering unusually harsh winters, crops failing far from the expected cycle. The imbalance below had already reached upward. Persephone's mind raced. Her dual role demanded action. Not only must she maintain order in the underworld, she must also influence the natural cycles above, reminding the world that life and death were entwined. Later, in the quiet of her chamber, Persephone reflected on the evening. She held a pomegranate, the reminder of her bond with the underworld. Its red seeds gleamed in the dim light, a symbol of life, death, and the delicate negotiation between them. Each seed she had consumed carried her closer to understanding her power, yet also tied her to responsibility beyond anything she had imagined. She knew the coming months would test her further. Rebellions could rise, mortals would falter, and the cycles of nature would demand her intervention. But Persephone no longer saw herself as a victim of circumstance. She was the queen who could command both fear and respect, who could weave mercy and justice, life and death, into a balance that sustained worlds. And in the shadows of the underworld, as she prepared for the next challenge, Persephone felt the pulse of power and purpose stronger than ever. She was ready to face what lay ahead, because a queen did not wait for destiny to unfold. She shaped it. The first light of spring barely touched the surface of the earth, yet Persephone already felt the stirrings of change. Above, the world longed for her return. Below, the underworld awaited her guidance. She had grown into her power, no longer the frightened maiden who had once fallen through the earth, no longer just Hades' bride. She was a queen, wise, unyielding, and fully aware of the delicate balance she now upheld. In the grand hall of shadows, the spirits and minor deities bowed as she entered. The rebellion of months past had become a distant memory, replaced by respect, earned through patience, courage, and the quiet authority of someone who had faced life and death alike. Even Hades, imposing and inscrutable, offered her a nod of acknowledgement, a rare gesture of partnership. But there was no time for complacency. A messenger arrived, trembling, bearing word of mortal lands where the thaw of spring had come early, throwing crops into disarray. Persephone understood instantly. The cycles were out of balance, a reminder that her influence now stretched beyond the underworld. She walked through the shadowed corridors, pomegranate in hand, and felt the weight of her dual existence. Each seed had bound her to the underworld, yet each had also awakened powers she had never imagined. With a breath that seemed to draw both light and shadow, she lifted her hand, sending ripples of energy through the realm. Rivers stilled, shades settled into their appointed places, and the underworld hummed with harmonious life once more. Above ground, the first shoots of green broke through the frost, a reflection of her command reaching upward. Mortals looked to the skies, feeling the invisible hand that guided seasons, growth, and renewal. Persephone's presence was felt everywhere, an unseen queen shaping life and death with equal precision. In that moment, she understood fully. Her story was not of victimhood, but of transformation. The underworld had tested her, shaped her, and taught her the truths that even the Olympians could not ignore. She was bound to death, yes, but also to life, its rhythms, its beauty, its inevitable cycles. She had become a bridge between worlds, the living and the dead, fertility and decay, loss and renewal. Hades approached, offering her his hand, not as a captor, but as a partner. Together they would govern realms not through fear or force, but through balance. Persephone accepted, feeling the weight and the promise of her full power settle around her shoulders. She was no longer simply the maiden or the queen consort. She was the queen of two worlds, the embodiment of life's eternal dance. As the sun rose higher, casting long rays across the earth, Persephone walked through both the living world and the shadows below, confident in her role, her purpose, and her power. The cycles would turn, seasons would change, and she would guide them all, unwavering. For the first time, both worlds were in perfect harmony, because their queen understood them completely. And somewhere, in the quiet moments between light and shadow, a single pomegranate seed glowed softly, a symbol of her journey from innocence to sovereignty, from captive to ruler, from Persephone to the eternal queen of life and death. The night drifts softly over the world, like a gentle curtain of silver and shadow. Deep beneath the earth, Persephone moves quietly through her realm, where rivers murmur slowly and the glow of pomegranate seeds spills a warm, tender light. Each gentle pulse of the underworld mirrors the rhythm of your own breathing. Slow, steady, calm. Above, the stars scatter across the sky like tiny lanterns, flickering softly, guiding the wandering thoughts of anyone who listens. The air smells faintly of blooming flowers, carrying the scent of quiet meadows and whispering fields. Every leaf, every breeze, every shadow moves in time with her, in a rhythm of life, rest, and renewal. Let your body sink into this calm. Feel the weight of your limbs ease, your thoughts softening, your heartbeat slowing. Imagine yourself walking through Persephone's fields, each step lighter than the last, each breath carrying you deeper into gentle darkness. The world outside fades. Only soft sounds remain, the distant ripple of rivers, the faint hum of unseen wings, the whisper of leaves. And in this quiet, your mind can float freely, untethered, as if drifting through the most serene dream. Breathe slowly, in and out. Feel the warmth of the earth beneath you, the quiet embrace of night around you. You are safe, you are calm, you are ready to drift, as Persephone drifts, between worlds, between waking and dreaming. And now, let yourself go, Deeper and deeper sleep.